It is such a good line.
Hang on.
All right. Uh-oh. All right, brother. For one moment, just before I shatter your spine to splinters, I'm gonna make you immortal. Welcome to Casual Room Terror, episode 129. I'm your host, Ryan, here with the other host, Hitch.
Yep, and we're hoping to bring to you a lot of really good fights out here today.
Yeah, this episode, we're talking about UFC 129, one of the greatest in history. We're talking about Sett.
Yeah, definitely looking forward to it. But you can't start a fight without giving the backstory to every fighter, which we're going to provide here, and we can't give the backstory without going through housekeeping.
Yep. You can find us everywhere. We mean that. We're not lying when we say that. We used to lie. We don't do that anymore. You can email us at podcastcore@gmail.com. You can visit us at podcastcore.com for all of our info. Follow us on all the platforms because that helps us get in the algorithms. We need that because we don't have marketing bucks. But like and comment, that helps. Word of mouth is the best way to keep the word going. Tell a friend. To learn about Fight Club by listening to the Casuals of Rune Terror podcast.
Yeah, that's right. We're breaking the cardinal rule of Fight Club today. and we're encouraging you to break that rule too.
If this episode gets pulled down, you know what happened.
You know exactly what happened. A lot of diehard Fight Club fans that didn't understand the movie canceled us.
So we're going to start with the spell, which we always do. And we start with Tag Out. So Tag Out is a 2-cost fast spell that has recall an ally and create a coin in hand, or spend 5 mana to recall an enemy and create a coin in hand.
As far as with this, that introduces the coin, which is something that we haven't really talked about on our show yet. So the coin is a focus spell or focus speed card. So, it's burst speed on your turn, but you can't play it on the stack. And it is 1 mana, refill a missing mana. So you kind of just refund your mana, or you're not cantripping because you're not going to draw off of it unless you have another effect. But it is something that's really good as far as if you're playing decks with focus, or not focus, with flow. So if you're trying to trigger flow, this is a great way to trigger flow because you get a spell stack and you don't lose the mana.
Right. Yeah, and there's in other games you play like Magic. One of the recent sets around the time of this episode is Celebration, which requires 2 things to come into play per turn to trigger it. And so when you have those type of abilities, these type of cards give you, some functionality there.
Yeah. And then as far as the spell Tag Out itself, we got the recall effect on it, which is always going to be fun. And it's very important as far as for Ionia play. But otherwise, it's recall. Is this really better than just like this straight up recall spell? Who knows? But
yeah. So as far as the flavor here, which is why we always come to these cards, we have a message from the Pit Professional. It says, I'll only come in under 2 conditions. First, if your opponent is having too much fun wrecking you. Second, you're the one having too much fun and I want my piece too. So in normal UFC, it's 1v1. In this UFC, in Runeterra UFC, there are multiple formats, just like a card game.
yeah. Let's not break down to too many of the formats there, because Sett kind of tells us a bit of what the formats are like. But yeah, no, this is UFC with like a WWE twist, right? Like you think that you got your opponent dead to rights, and then oh my god, it's the professional pit fighter coming in with a chair.
JR going crazy in the booth. Oh my god!
Dana White just standing off somewhere to the side, just counting his money.
You mean Sett? All right, so
Hey!
so this takes us to our follower, who is a named character, Master Bingwen, the Sieve. Is that how you pronounce it, Sieve?
Yes.
What does that mean?
A sieve is kind of like if I'm understanding it right, I could be
Yeah.
wrong, and we're gonna get roasted so hard on this episode.
Tell us in the comments.
Yeah, podcastscore@gmail.com. But it's think of it kind of like not a hypodermis needle.
Okay.
So like kind of a needle that doesn't actually go through the epidermis, and then you like place a sieve on your wounds, similar to a salve.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I think a sieve is actually used to drain instead of to apply.
Oh, this kind of gives us some depth here, because this card is a 5-mana 3/3 with elusive.
5-mana 3/3.
And on the play, the next time you play a unit this round, summon an exact copy, ephemeral copy of it. And in the picture, you get why, right? We get a picture of Sett fighting the pit professional, and we have Master Bingwen here. And what this kind of gives us is the sense that, okay, when we talk about his bio, you'll understand Sett's upbringing. It's more rough. There's no like actual training there, but it seems like at some point there was some leadership that kind of helped him become not only the fighter he is, but the businessman he is as well.
Yes, and especially once we like dive into how this fighting world is, it makes sense that it's gonna have more of like an organized criminal feel than anything. But like that's like, what about the flavor of the card? We got flavor here. We got flavor here.
Yeah, so it says Bingwen the Bird was once a fighter, so called for his crane-like stance and agility. Because remember, we're in Ionia. Since retiring, he has taken up the mantle of a trainer, using his keen eye and firm hand to separate the fine talent from the coarse. So, yeah, in a UFC situation, an arena type situation, you're going to have trainers, right? That also used to, throw down in the gauntlet.
Yeah. And like, well, you're gonna be a star, Rocky. You're gonna be a star. We're gonna build you up. Like, you can't have the 80s montage without some master to train you, right?
Yeah. And who's he training?
So he is training Sett, and as you know what? Me neither. But yeah, don't worry. Today's the day that you're going to hear about him. Podcastscore@gmail.com. And so Sett, the beginning of our tale is that Sett has a very humble background, and that background is a little bit more on the sad side because he is a mixed race, and not just a mixed race. He's in a mixed race in a world where half of him is truly, truly hated. So Sett is the product of a union between a Noxian human, who's his father, and a Vastaya. So a Noxian got shacked up with a Vastaya. They gave birth to Sett, and now Sett, who has been outcast from the Vastayan community for being, half human, and is now ostracized by the Ionians because his father is Noxian. We have a lot of episodes that cover why Ionians don't like Noxians. So really just go take your pick. We'd be here for 30 minutes with me breaking that down. All right. But for
30 minutes, not even the episodes are 30 minutes. It'd be more than that.
It'd be a long time. But for these reasons, Sett and his family were ostracized. But for the most part, at his very early youth, they were protected by his father's reputation. Yeah. His father was a very well-known pit fighter. And because of his reputation in the pits, and essentially his dad was a well-known UFC fighter.
Yep.
You're not going to bully the kid whose dad could beat up everyone.
Yeah.
So, uh, Sett kind of lived a quiet life because he
My dad owns a
was
dealership.
yeah, his dad owns a dealership, but he was protected by that reputation,
Mhm.
and that did protect him until his dad ends up leaving. So now, with his mom raising a child by herself and being ostracized by her own people, as well as the Ionians because she's not human, they now get bullied on the main page too,
Mhm.
because they like, Set is a half breed, you're Vistayan, and your dad was an Oxian. And Set found out that the only way to really kind of keep the bullying at bay was to beat up the bullies.
Yeah. I
S-
support it. I support it 100%.
yeah, look, like I love that because it's like people always kind of throw this out when it's talking about equality, where it's like, yeah, well, my hands are rated E for everyone, right? And but I mean, this is I've always thought that this is a decent way to deal with bullying. Of just like, if they're gonna be bullies, you don't start it, but end it.
Yeah.
Like I think a lot of people growing up in the South learned that at a young age.
Mhm.
And Sett did learn very quickly, like, look, if we're gonna be pariahs, like, that's fine. I don't need friends, but I'm not gonna take anyone's crap. And he became well known as far as within the young generation,
Yeah.
as far as being somebody that will fight, kind of punch first, ask questions later if you anger him. But if you keep your distance, you'll be fine. And once he developed this reputation for fighting, his mother really started to hound him, never go to the fighting pits. Um, and certainly it's probably because she was just trying to protect her son, because you don't want a loved one getting hurt.
Yeah.
But it was also probably because, the fighting pits are not an Ionian thing. There's a reason they're called the Noxian fighting pits. Uh, and again, we have a lot of episodes covering that Noxians like to fight and Ionians don't like Noxians. Like, just really take your pick. And for a while, Sett does listen to his mother. He does his best to try to bring a little bit into the household to help a struggling single mom. But after a while, he finally works up the nerve to figure out, like, okay, what's going on with the Noxian pits? And my life has gotten so much worse since my dad left the picture.
Yeah.
So that's it. I'm gonna go into these pits and see if I can find my dad. And it is once he goes to the fighting pits, we do get to see a little bit of details here that with these fighting pits, it isn't just like a UFC mixed martial art thing
Yeah.
in the way that we know it. It's mixed martial arts with all of the martial arts, lethal or non-lethal.
Yep.
Like, so these are basically gladiator pits.
Yep.
And we get a bit of that breakdown, but it's here when Sett starts talking to the matchmaker that he finds out that his dad was a well-known pit fighter, but he was able to earn enough money to buy out his contract, and he left to find better pits. So he left, like, dad literally went to go buy milk and never came back. And it is in this moment that Sett, combined with the way that he was able to survive his childhood up to this point and this newfound anger that his dad legitimately did abandon him and his mom, that he decides that he's going to go into the fighting pits himself. And for Sett, his goal is to become a renowned enough fighter to get his dad to come back here. Like, if he makes a big enough name for himself, any fighter is going to want to take him on. Like, we get to see that in, UFC and in boxing, that
Yeah.
if you're at the top, guys are going to want to try to take you out so they can be at the top.
Yeah.
And that's Sett's goal here. And he does find success despite his lack of proper training. Like, it's constantly put down here that he doesn't have a fighting style. He doesn't have any kind of training. He just has experience because this is how he's survived to this point.
Yeah, and he's half Vistayan.
Yeah.
That kind of helps as
Right.
well.
And which we like covered in episodes like with Ari,
Yeah.
as far as the magical abilities of Vastaya. And as once he gets into the pits, he became well known as the Beast Boy Bastard. Uh, which I love that, like, because it's, like it kind of like hammers home like to how rough his upbringing is, but it
Yeah.
also just sounds like a name that came out of like Trailer Park Boys. So like I'm imagining Sett just like punching the glasses off of Bubbles.
So listen, some people have the Better Business Bureau. Runeterra has.
Stop.
If you see the stamp of approval, you know what's up.
you know what's up. So the Beast Boy Bastard does, make a name for himself. He starts really raking in a lot of prize money.
Mhm.
And once he's raking in this prize money, he's able to provide a better life for him and his mom. He constantly lies to his mom as to how he's getting this money, but he doesn't want to stop bringing it in because he loves how happy that she is that he's successful, and how happy that they both are now that they have a better, a better style of life, because you can lie to yourself as much as you want. Money does have the potential to buy happiness. Sorry.
And positioning, so it makes it, in the community, they're probably seeing less hate, right? That kind of stuff.
Yep. So it is at this point when he's really finding success that he decides, there is a way to make more money, and I can make more money if I'm running the show. So yeah, it's time to start running the show. So he goes to the fight pits one day. He gets the owner and all of his team together in a meeting, and he says, "Guys, I think that I could do a better job of running this business than you can." They all say, "We disagree." He quietly walks to the door and locks it.
No. Okay, so quick flashback. There was an episode where we talked about, there's a couple of parallels here. In our Rise episode, we talked about, and Hedge has water in his mouth, so I'll wait for him to finish. When someone is digging through drawers, right, during a confrontation, when there's an argument going on, when they're looking for something, or they're locking a door and you're in that room with them,
you're in trouble.
Nothing good is happening next. They're not going to show you a magic trick. I mean, they might show you a magic trick, but it's not the trick you want to see.
It's not a trick for entertainment. Like, it's the kind of magic trick that we got to see Heath Ledger do as the Joker. I'm going to make this pen disappear. You do not want to volunteer to be the assistant for that trick.
Locking the door is crazy.
So yeah, he locks and bars the door, and then like the way that the story is written is that he locks the door, and then it's like 30 minutes later the door is unlocked and a bunch of bruised and bloodied investors walk out, and Sett is officially the boss of the fighting pits.
It goes to reinforce what you've mentioned before, where in this specific instance, violence in a business situation is respected, right? Because that's kind of the foundation of Noxus. So, it would make his mom sad if she found this out, right? How he became boss, because this is not the Vastarian way. This is not an Ionian way to climb the ladder. But he has some Noxus blood too, so this is very Noxian.
Yes, and on to the note, as far as it being very Noxian, is that this is a Noxian environment in Ionia.
Yeah.
So more likely than not, some of the ways that this place was taking in money was not in the legal manner.
Mhm.
So it doesn't matter if this was, an unprofessional business take or not. If you're already a criminal, what's another crime to you, right? So, but on top of it being a crime that is going to be overlooked or not, like you said, power is ultimately respected, and that Sett is more powerful than the last guy.
Yeah.
So you're going to follow the most powerful guy in the business, and all the other investors decide to, step in line. follow Sett, and hopefully they get a return of their investment. And to Sett's credit, they're going to get their return because Sett actually was able to open the doors to more Ionians in the fighting pits.
Yeah.
And
Because
which is a crazy idea, right?
thanks,
Because
Irelia.
Yeah, but to that point, you know, you can listen to the Irelia episode if you don't get the joke. But to that point, this is at a point in history where there are, you know, like, I doubt that Sett's the only the only kid that was raised as half Noxian, right? Because that's just how
Tends to happen
life
after
works.
major wars.
Yeah, that's just how life works. So, but it is at this point that Ionians have discovered that they have a bit of a bloodlust themselves. And we get to see that in Irelia's story a lot. But because of this, Sett sees an untapped market and is able to open the doors to more Ionians. And then there actually are making more money than with the previous bosses. Sett is experiencing even more success than he was experiencing before. And this is all in lines with his goal, because if he can put this fighting pit on a big enough pedestal for the whole world to see, then maybe his dad will come back and he can beat the crap out of him. Because that's all Sett really wants to do is beat the crap out of his deadbeat dad. And that's kind of where our story ends here. You know, so a bit more on the short and sweet side, and which kind of fits us perfectly because we haven't gotten to talk about the card yet. And boy, when this card came out, it was something. Like, we've got a 5 mana 4/5 with Challenger. And reading the rest of the card, spoilers, I don't see the word quick attack anywhere. So let's go. We did it. We made it a champion without quick attack.
But listen, Sett does have a dumpy on him. We haven't given the dumpy seal out lately.
4/5 for 5. Does that really feel like dumpy seal of approval?
I don't remember.
It's
been a long time.
Okay, you know what? I will permit the dumpy
Do it for
seal
the ladies
because
out there.
Yeah, I'll permit the dumpy seal not because I want to get punched, and also because of the other effect here. The first time I would drop below 1 health while attacking, give me barrier instead. So he basically does have, like, you know, the means to have an extra big dumpy because it's more than 5 technically.
He has access to a BBL.
Yeah, he got access to BBL. And then his level up is you have spent 40 plus mana. So like the level up requirement is pretty steep, but like we were discussing with the flow cards and the new coin mechanic that came out alongside Sett, it's not going to be, you know, impossible to pull off. And boy, do you get a payout when you pull this off. So he becomes a 5 mana 5/6 with Challenger, and while I'm attacking, I can't take damage or die. Ooh, boy, that's crazy. And then each round, create a showstopper in hand once you've spent 12 plus mana. So if you're able to keep cycling through this mana, you get the showstopper, which is a 0 mana slow speed spell. Obliterate an enemy and deal 1 damage to all other enemies in the enemy nexus. So, holy cow.
If you played against him in League of Legends, you understand.
Yes. If God, especially like the mathematic build for Sett, where he just like it's like a pseudo like burst build where he could just 100 to 0 in 1 rotation. It makes sense. So yeah, the payoff for this card is insane, but I think even the front side of the card is absolutely terrifying because he can basically like guaranteed 2 for 1 minimum, if not 3 for 1 your opponent, which is great. And of course, we got to talk about the flavor. So on the front side, we've got basking in the roar of the crowd, packed into his exclusive underground arena. Sett indulges in a rare moment of introspection. He remembers all he fought for and what might yet come his way. He knows one thing for certain, though. It's good to be the boss. And as a Mel Brooks fan, I love the ending there because it's good to be the king. and then of course we get the flip side, which is a direct quote. And problem with being the boss is, for most, you get soft. Your own calluses start healing, and before long, you're what you swore you'd never be. So I'm grateful for all this chaos. Finally, someone's bringing the beast out of me. And as far as like having a quote like for Sett, who literally fought his way to the top of
Yeah.
an underground criminal organization, saying someone brought the beast out of you is crazy. But with the direct quote, if you if you pull up the direct quote, like the reference is actually to someone that was made for the Runeterra card game, which is he's talking to Jack. So which hopefully we get to cover Jack at some point, because that's just an interesting concept as to all the League of Legends world, as well as like to our show itself. But that's gonna be a story for another time, because right now Sett is just, he's at the top of the ladder and now he's mad.
There's one more thing I want to bring in here, which Hedge mentioned about one of the payoffs, which is Showstopper. The card, whatever. The quote would be one of the greatest WWE lines if spoken. It says, "For one moment, just before I shatter your spine to splinters, I'm going to make you immortal." From Sett himself. It is such a good line.
Hang on.
All right. Uh-oh.
All right, brother. For one moment, just before I shatter your spine to splinters, I'm gonna make you immortal.
Yep, that was worth it.
Middle school me is jumping on my couch right now. Yeah,
going crazy. Stone cold glass shatter.
Mom, I need a Bud Light to pour over my head.
I'm not gonna drink it, I promise.
I
promise. So that wraps up our bio for Sett. So this is the part of the episode. Once again, you can bounce out if you want to. We're gonna do a little bit more talking. One thing we want to talk about is what we like to call the Triangle of Madness. Now, we bring up the geography sometimes here, and if you remember, Ionia is like an island nation off to the most east. Noxus is off the shores to the west, and then below Noxus is Piltover Zon. And obviously in the story, we talk about him creating this arena in Ionia, which is already a unique situation. There's the backing from Noxus, since that was the catalyst for this happening, right? The pit's there. But we talk a lot about the money, right? And a lot of money is now moving. And you can't do that without talking about Piltover Zon. So why do I bring that up? Because if you remember, we have a show called Arcane, which takes place in Piltover Zon. So we now have another aspect or another avenue we can explore, because in that show, the first season that came out, towards the end, you can see the Piltover money interest in the military-industrial complex of Noxus being expressed openly. So if they're doing that, there's probably some Piltover money rolling around in the interest, that fighting interest in Ionia, because it is a unique market.
And to that point, I'm glad that you brought up the map, because I love nerding out about like logistics, because that's how I put food on my table. So like, not only because we already know that there is going to be a money interest there, and that with the positioning of Piltover and Zon, Piltover and Zon is the most central like power in Runeterra, just location wise. They have basically at the closest point connecting to the Shuriman continent, which also involves Targon, because that's on the westernmost front of Shurima. And then they are on the mainland that is with Noxus, Demacia, and Freljord. But with that central positioning, they're right on the channel that's connecting those continents, which means that they have access to water travel. And if you are traveling out in the eastward point, the first nation that you're going to hit is Bilgewater, not Ionia, with the way that the channels are set up. So that is like that is why Piltover and Zon is going to be like the money central, because like these other remote areas, if they're going to want trade of some kind, at some point it's going to have to go through them. And we know, thanks to Arcane, that they have ways to travel really far, really fast. So if you can get, like, if you think of it from a shipping perspective, if you can get the product to your customer faster, they're going to pay you what you agreed on, and they're likely going to use you again. So Piltover and Zon is going to be that central hub, but they connect everybody. And if Ionia is going to be having like a lot of money raked in, especially since they are possibly the most remote nation outside of the Freljord, they're going to depend heavily on trade. So it only makes sense that you're going to be looking at the center for trade. And that's how you also get access to some of these other some of these other regions as well, because like with that direct quote off of his card, we know Sett's gonna end up having some kind of run-in with Jack. And Jack is very clearly not Ionian, and he's awesome, but he's not Noxian. We're just talking straight up Corsair business, and that's where Bilgewater actually comes into this, and that makes sense because Bilgewater could likely disrupt a lot of the trade that's not going through Piltover.
No, I gotta stop you. We're giving away too much for free, Riot. You're doing great, Hetch, and that's the problem, right? You have our information. You know how to
podcastscore@gmail.com.
You know how to contact us. Fans, I'm sorry to stop him there, okay? We have to. He can't give away for free what people will pay for.
I told you, I can nerd out about the logistics.
No, it's super cool, though, when you start to break that stuff down, because as we always mention, as the date of this show, we don't have our MMO yet. It's still far off. We still dream about it. And these are the types of depths we want them to go. That's what that genre exists for. And we know, because Baldur's Gate came out, that it can be done.
Yeah. So I mean, not just because of Baldur's Gate, like even if Baldur's Gate hadn't come out before recording this, we know it could be done because they've already laid the blueprint, right? Like I'm not just coming up with this idea off the top of my head. I'm using what Riot's already given us. So it's like, you have the means to do it. We just want the execution. And again, we can help with that execution, podcastscore@gmail.com.
So as always, with that, thanks for hanging out, guys. As always, we love it. Thanks for listening. That helps. And we'll be back soon with the next episode.
Yeah. Take care, everybody.